Legendary actress, producer, animal rights activist Betty White died Dec. 31, 2021. Our favorite golden girl was 99. Betty Marion White was born on January 17, 1922, in Oak Park, Illinois, and was the only child of Christine Tess and Horace Logan White. Her family moved to California when Betty was just a year old. She initially wanted to be a forest ranger, but in the 1940s, women weren't permitted to be in that field. She was later made an honorary forest ranger by the U.S. Forest Service. White found her passion for performing during high school in Los Angeles. "I was in the graduation play, and the president of our senior class and I sang The Merry Widow, and did a little dance," White told NPR. "I think that's when the showbiz bug bit me and they haven't been able to get rid of me since." After graduating, she found work modeling. By 1949, the young actress was in the new talk show, Hollywood on Television with Eddie Albert. She was on the live broadcast for 5.5 hours a day, 6 days a week. Within a few years, White co-founded her own production company and was not only a TV pioneer, she was one of the first producers in Hollywood. When she launched her television show, Life with Elizabeth, White became the rare woman who had creative control both behind and in front of the camera, acting, producing and writing the sitcom. And she won an Emmy for her work. A lot has changed in Hollywood, and the world, in the decades since she first dipped into show business, but one thing's for sure, Betty White remained as funny as ever. When interviewed for her Parade cover story in 2018, White revealed her secret to a long, happy and healthful life. "Enjoy life," she said. "Accentuate the positive, not the negative." It sounds so trite, but a lot of people will pick out something to complain about, rather than say, "Hey, that was great." It's not hard to find great stuff if you look. She also said she loved vodka and hot dogs, probably in that order. On January 17, 2021, when she turned 99, she told Ed how she would be celebrating this milestone birthday. "Running a mile each morning has been curtailed by COVID, so I am working on getting the 1970s television show, The Pet Set re-released, and feeding the 2 ducks who come to visit me every day." With 7 Emmy Awards, 4 different television shows called The Betty White Show, countless other series, and many decades later, White remains a force. A lot of people really find Betty White inspiring. She has been working as an actor for more than 6 decades in a business that doesn't exactly value getting older, said Sandra Bullock when presenting White with the Screen Actors Guild Life Achievement Award. "Betty, you make me feel like a slacker." We're taking a look back at photos of Betty White through the years, from her early days as a young actress on KLAC-TV to the Mary Tyler Moore Show, Golden Girls and beyond. Eddie Albert and Betty White 1952. Betty White with Eddie Albert in front of the Clack TV camera during a broadcast of the talk show, Hollywood on Television. Betty White, 1954. In 1954, Betty White created and hosted her own daily variety and talk show, The Betty White Show. Betty White, 1954. At 32, Betty White was already a successful producer and Emmy-winning actress. Betty White, 1955. A promotional studio portrait of Betty White in 1955. Betty White, mid-1950s. Betty White holds a bouquet of roses. Betty White, 1950. Betty White feeds her street, Bernard, Stormy, before dashing off to the studio where she was starring in Life with Elizabeth. Betty White, 1955. Betty White, 1955.
Betty White, 1955. Life with Elizabeth ended in 1955 after a 3-year run. White has said that her character was based on sketches that she performed on the show Hollywood on Television. Betty White, 1954. Betty White, 1954. Betty White, 1950s. Betty White, 1950s. Betty White is honored as she rides in the Christmas parade in Los Angeles. Betty White, 1956. As producer of her talk show The Betty White Show, White hired a female director in Arthur Duncan, an African-American actor, to be a regular on the show. Betty White, 1957. Betty White played Vicki Angel on the ABC sitcom Date with the Angels. Betty White, 1960s. In this photos from the 1960s, Betty White was described as the Cinderella girl next door on NBC's Coast to Coast TV show, chatting, singing, and always friendly. Betty White, 1950. A longtime animal lover, Betty White performs with her poodle, Danny. She had 2 other dogs, a Pekingese and a street Bernard, but she said neither of them were as talented as Danny. Betty White and Lorne Greene, 1969. Betty White with actor Lorne Greene in a Macy's Thanksgiving parade ad in 1969. The pair presented the telecast for NBC television. Betty White and Alan Ludden, 1963.
Betty White met Alan Ludden when she appeared on his show Password, and they fell in love instantly. After 3 proposals, she finally agreed to marry him. They wed at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas on June 14, 1963. Betty White and Alan Ludden, 1966. Betty White and Alan Ludden at the 18th Emmy Awards, at the Hollywood Palladium, Los Angeles, May 22, 1966. Betty White and Alan Ludden, 1974. Betty White and her husband, TV producer and host Alan Ludden, at the International Broadcasting Awards dinner tribute to Mary Tyler Moore. Betty White and Mary Tyler Moore cast, 1976. From left, Ed Asner, Betty White, Mary Tyler Moore and Ted Knight. They all won Emmys for their roles on the Mary Tyler Moore Show except Asner, who won his for his performance in Rich Man, Poor Man. Betty White and Layla Ludden, 1981. Betty White and her mother-in-law, Layla M. Allen, attend the funeral of White's late husband and love her life, Alan Ludden, who passed away from cancer when he was 63. Betty White and Michael J. Fox, 1986. Betty White and Michael J. Fox pose with their Emmy Awards for Outstanding Lead Actress and Actor in a Comedy Series. White won for her role on Golden Girls and Fox for his on Family Ties. Betty White and Lucille Ball, 1987. Betty White and Lucille Ball embrace at a book signing event in Los Angeles in October 1987. Betty White, Estelle Getty and B. Arthur, 1986. From left, Estelle Getty, Betty White and B. Arthur of the Golden Girls in New York City in 1986. Betty White, 1990. Betty White when she was playing Rose Nilland on Golden Girls. Betty White, 1994. Betty White attends the 2nd Annual Comedy Hall of Fame on August 28, 1994 at the Beverly Hilton Hotel in Beverly Hills, California. Betty White, 2013. Betty White hosts the Beastly Ball fundraiser media preview at the Los Angeles Zoo in 2013. White is a longtime trustee of the Los Angeles Zoo. Georgia Engel, Wendy Malick. Jane leaves Betty White 2013. Georgia Engel, Wendy Malick, Jane leaves and Betty White attend TV Land's Hot in Cleveland live show on June 19, 2013, in Studio City, California. Betty White, 2015. Betty White holds a sugar glider at the Greater Los Angeles Zoo Association's GLAZA 45th Annual Beastly Ball at the Los Angeles Zoo. Betty White, 2018. Betty White at the 70th Emmy Awards at the Microsoft Theater in Los Angeles in 2018. Betty White and Golden Girls cast, 1980s. A promotional portrait of the cast of Golden Girls. From top left, Rue McClanahan, B. Arthur, Betty White and Estelle Getty. Betty White with cast of Hot in Cleveland, 2015. Valerie Bertinelli, Wendy Malick, Betty White and Jane Leaves attend the Betty White celebration of her 93rd birthday on the set of Hot in Cleveland at CBS Studios. Betty White with cast of Hot in Cleveland, 2013. Wendy Malick, Valerie Bertinelli, Betty White and Jane Leaves attend the after-party for TV Land's Hot in Cleveland live show on June 19, 2013 in Studio City, California. Betty White and Alex Trebek, 1986. Alex Trebek and Betty White at the 3rd Annual Television Academy Hall of Fame induction ceremony in Santa Monica. The duo were great friends. Betty White, 1975. Betty White with her Emmy Award. She has been nominated for 22 Emmys and has won 7. Betty White, 1983. Betty White broke another record in 1983 when she became the first woman to win a Daytime Emmy Award in the category of Outstanding Game Show Host. She won for her NBC show Just Men. Betty White, 1993. At the ATAS-TV Hall of Fame Plaza dedication, November 20, 1993. Betty White, 2013. Betty White and Delilah posed together during the American Humane Association Hero Dog Awards in 2013 at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. Betty White, 1994. Betty White in Los Angeles, 1994. Betty White, 1995. Betty White at the premiere of the film Congo in Hollywood, California. The same year she would be inducted into the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences Hall of Fame. Betty White, 1995. Betty White attends the 64th Annual Hollywood Christmas Parade, December 3, 1995 at KTLA Studios in Hollywood. Betty White, 1995. Betty White attends the ABC TV Summer Press Tour, July 20, 1995 at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Pasadena, California. Betty White, 2002. Betty White at NBC's 75th anniversary celebration at Rockefeller Plaza in New York City. Betty White, 2003. Betty White attends the 2003 Primetime Creative Arts Awards at the Shrine Auditorium, September 13, 2003. Betty White, 2014. At the Greater Los Angeles Zoo Association's 44th Annual Beastly Ball at the Los Angeles Zoo in 2014. Betty White, 2015. Betty White at the Greater Los Angeles Zoo Association's Beastly Ball fundraiser at Los Angeles Zoo on June 11, 2015. I have been such a zoo nut all my life that I am practically a zookeeper, she told Smithsonian Magazine in 2012.